So you want to start a YouTube channel or shoot a short film, but you can't decide on what camera to buy. Well, you might just consider the one you carry with you every day in your pocket. So here are 10 reasons that I think your smartphone is an ideal option, especially for beginners, but really anyone shooting video today. All right, number one, I'm going to assume you already own the phone. And so what that means is there is no extra expense for a camera. Now, I'm not saying don't buy a camera, a third-party camera, a traditional camera, a mirrorless camera, whatever. I'm saying that you don't need to buy one. The camera you have in your phone is an amazing camera. It's built right in, and so you don't need to incur the additional expense, depending on what you're doing. But in particular, as a beginner, using your phone, the thing you make calls on and text all day long, it can also shoot great video. And so it can save you money and still give you really good results in the end. The great thing is how easy the phone is to use, and I'm really referring to the native camera app. You more or less just point and shoot. Now I'm saying you don't need to work on your controls like locking the white balance or the focus, etc. But in particular, again, for beginners, you can just take that and it shoots 4K, 24 frames per second. You can even shoot ProRes. So again, it's very easy to use. And when you're just starting out, really the main thing you want to do is start shooting, and you can do that very easily with the native camera app. Now, a big one today, in particular the last couple of years with the newer phones, is you are not sacrificing quality. The quality is really good on these latest generation phones. Now, is it the same as a $4,000 mirrorless camera? No, but depending on what you're doing, that doesn't really matter. I mean, the main difference you'll see is, of course, low light ability and shallow depth of field. But doing just everyday video, like for a YouTube channel or for corporate video or even a short film, an iPhone is more than enough. And especially, again, for beginners, the phone will do very well in most situations, and it's something you already have. One thing I especially love about using phones is how easy it is to shoot a time lapse. And as a matter of fact, even though I am not a beginner, I've been doing this 20 years, I use my phone mixed in with my traditional cameras all the time for time lapse, but any kind of video really, but time lapse in particular because it does such a great job and it takes all the hard controls that you have to set out of the equation. It does it for you. Now, there are third-party apps that do a better job than the native camera app, but with the native camera app, you can shoot amazing looking time lapse. Just put an ND filter on your camera and you'll get a little bit of motion blur, or you can do motion blur in post-production. One of the most popular videos on my YouTube channel was one I did like 5 years ago, and it was about how to use the native camera app to shoot a time lapse. So you can really add great production value shooting a time lapse just using your iPhone. One thing I really love about new phones from the last couple of years in particular is how good the stabilization is. And so this is something that would be really hard to do with a traditional camera. Even with an image stabilized lens, you would be getting micro vibrations and all kinds of bumps and such. But with a phone, you can do it with no problem at all. Now, do I recommend this all the time? No. Gimbals are great, but you don't need a gimbal. And that's really the main point. You can actually get some great results using the phone, and the stabilization is built in. Now, earlier I mentioned shallow depth of field, and that's a benefit to using a mirrorless camera. But with an iPhone, the latest iPhones especially, you can get cinematic mode and get a nice background blur. And so I don't use this a ton, partly because there are issues with it, mainly the white balance, you can't lock it, and then also the exposure. But if you're in a shot and you're not moving too much, or you're not putting your hands in front of the camera and making it shift, that is the white balance or the focus or the exposure, because it's hard to lock. You can lock the focus, but either way, the idea that you can get that nice shallow depth of field on a phone that you carry in your pocket is really pretty cool. Another really cool thing is you can actually shoot underwater. Now, I've done a couple of videos about shooting underwater. It's not something Apple recommends, but you can absolutely do it. The phone will survive, so to speak, for 30 minutes. I've only kept it underwater maybe 2 or 3 minutes at a time, but it is a great option if you don't have a GoPro or something else, and actually gives you higher quality than a GoPro, shooting ProRes or even ProRes log using a third-party app. But having the ability to shoot like that without an underwater housing just whenever you want, whether you're at the lake, the ocean, or in a pool, is really pretty cool. Now, earlier I mentioned manual control, and you have limited abilities there with the native camera app, very limited. However, that's the beauty, is there are tons of third-party apps like Filmic Pro, Cinema P3, Beastcam, etc. that allow you full control over the image. So if you're a beginner, it's a great way to learn how to set the exposure using ISO, shutter speed, etc., which could then translate to a traditional camera. And if you're a pro, having that ability on a phone to match in with the traditional camera is super important and very cool again. And so I recommend trying out third-party apps, especially once you get used to the native camera app. Although I still use the native camera app quite a bit, I'm using it right now. But having the ability to shoot in third-party apps with more pro control is another great reason to use your phone. Now, one thing related to shooting but not using your phone to shoot video is using your phone as a teleprompter. This is something great, especially for YouTube, but also corporate video, etc. And of course, it works very well on an iPad because you have more screen real estate, but it will work fine on an iPhone as well. They make different mounts for either. And so this is just another one of those things that really does make the case that the phone is a great Swiss Army knife tool to have in your kit. Then finally, after you've shot all your video, you can use the same device to edit your video. Now you can use CapCut, you can use LumaFusion. There are a myriad of great apps out there to edit your video. So it really makes it a great all-in-one solution. You shoot all your video and then edit all your video on the exact same phone. I'm sure a lot of the info in this video was obvious to some of you guys, but if you're just starting out, it may not be. But I really find it amazing how versatile the phone can be, whether you're a beginner or a pro. And I use it all the time, and I really highly recommend it. So if you're searching for a great camera, especially if you're just starting out, you now know where to look. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.